It's time for the Freedom in 5 Minutes podcast. Powerful and liberating business strategies you can start in 5 minutes or less. Now, here's your host, Dean Soto.
Hey, this is Dean Soto, founder of FreedomIn5Minutes.com and Prosulum.com, Prosulum.com. And we're here again with another Freedom in 5 Minute podcast episode. Today's topic is this. Sometimes you have to go with the flow. That and more coming up. Well, it's another great morning here. Doing some morning routine, morning walk, morning talk with the Luna Meister. Got Miss Luna running around, and yeah, last night my wife and my oldest daughter, every so often they'll go and spend time together. And they'll go to church, they'll go and pray, they'll do things together, get shopping done, go and get some dinner, and so on and so forth. So I was left with the rest of the kids. I was left as Mr. Mom. So that was fun. So that was definitely awesome. And guys, if you're listening to this, don't forget to subscribe to Freedom in 5 Minutes podcast. You can subscribe at iTunes. So if you Google Freedom in 5 Minutes podcast, iTunes, or Apple or whatever it is, if you go to Apple, if you Google Freedom in 5 Minutes, it will pop up and you can go there and you can subscribe on your podcast app. You can actually also do the same with Spotify. So if you go to Spotify and you search Freedom in 5 Minutes, you can subscribe on Spotify as well. All right. So let's get into it. So the last few weeks have been very interesting. 2020 is definitely beginning to show signs that it is a pretty amazing year so far. And I don't know if that's because of the numerical value of 2020 that we're going to be able to see clearly, and that it's just going to be one of those years that bring a lot of joy and everything like that. But it's one of those years that already, things have been going very, very well from a business standpoint, but also from what I like to call the waves that we all are sent, the waves that we are all sent to ride, to enjoy, and to wait for those waves when we're supposed to wait for those waves. And you're probably thinking, what in the heck are you talking about? So one of the books that my daughter and I are reading, we read it just about every night, is a book by C.S. Lewis called Perelandra. Now, Perelandra, I don't know how to spell it. If you want to find out how to spell it, go to Google and you can figure out how to spell it. But I believe it's Perelandra. Anyway, so it is the second book in a trilogy. It's the second book in what is called C.S. Lewis's Space Trilogy. We've already read the first book, which is called Out of the Silent Planet, and we are on to the second book, which is called Perelandra. The books are so number 1 and number 2 in this series are very, very different from each other. They both have the same main character, a guy named Ransom. That's not his real name, as is mentioned in the book, but that's what the narrator calls him. His name's Ransom, Ransom. And so in the first book, he's what was called a pedestrian. So he's two things. He's a philologist who's somebody who studies languages, who studies etymology and things like that. And it's somebody who is studying other languages and is very interested in how languages come to be, how they're structured, grammatically structured. And so he's a philologist and a professor, but he's also what is called a pedestrian. So back in the day, people actually used to walk. Now, we have people who run marathons. We have people who camp and hike and all this other stuff. There were people who, part of what they enjoyed doing in Britain is walking from place to place. And these are long distances. And so in the first book, he is on a little trip. He is on his way from one point to another. And it's getting late. It's getting hungry. He's getting hungry, and he needs to stop. And so all these places that he's trying to get to, or all these places in between where he's at right now and his destination, they're not open, and he's just having a very hard time finding a place to rest. Right. So he stumbles upon, and I don't want to ruin it for you, but if you're ever going to read the book, but he stumbles upon. So if you don't want to be have any spoilers, you probably want to stop listening now, because I'm going to go through the premises of both books. And so if you don't if you don't want to have anything spoiled for you, then go ahead and shut this off now. Okay, so anyway, Ransom goes and he stumbles upon a house where there's a wife who is asking if he had seen her husband. And this is kind of like a commoner, somebody who is, just like kind of maybe like a farmer, somebody who has a homestead, and she's just worried she has not seen her husband at all, right? Well, Ransom asks her, well, where is he? Where was he going? And so on. And so she points him in the direction of this one house. They go, he ends up walking into the house to find this guy, and finds two professors there. One by the name of Weston and one by the name of Devine. Devine, D-E-V-I-N-E. And they have this guy. They actually have him drugged, and they kind of try and hide it all from Ransom. And lo and behold, essentially after a lot of talking and a lot of back and forth as professors, they end up drugging Ransom and bring him on to what he eventually finds out is a spaceship. A spaceship going to Malacandra. And Malacandra is our version of Mars. It is the name, what they call Old Solar in the book. It's the language in Old Solar given to what we would call Mars. So he goes there. He's thinking it's going to be this. He's thinking that it's going to be this, hideous planet. There's nothing going to be there. It's going to be a rock, a desert, just like what NASA shows on our stuff, right? Whether you believe that's true or not. I tend to be more of a conspiracy theorist type, so I like the fantasies of what Mars potentially could look like. Anyway, I'm not going to get into all that. Anyway, so give me a drink of my coffee. Anyway, so he goes to Mars, gets there, and finds that it's full of life. It's full of a lot of life that he initially thinks are monsters. You have a couple of different races of these monsters, and I'm not going to ruin them all for you. It's actually really cool. But he finds out that in the end, Weston and Devine were bringing Ransom literally as a ransom, as somebody who they thought that these monsters wanted a human sacrifice, and so they brought him so that they can continue to essentially take gold from take gold that they're finding from Mars and bring it back to Earth. Well, Ransom finds out that these creatures are actually persons. They have consciousness. They are able to communicate. So he learns their language. He learns all this different stuff. It's pretty amazing. And he finds out that there are also these spiritual creatures, which are called Eldils, Eldils, like an Eldil or an Eldilla. Eldilla are how you say it in a plural. And ultimately, for each planet, there is a master, or like the kind of like the head Eldil, which is called an Oyarsa. So this is the one who manages all of the life on these planets. So whether the planet is Mars or it's Venus or anyway, every single one has some type of master Oyarsa. Okay. So anyway, all this being said, he's finding out all these things, and eventually he finds out that that his own planet, which they call Thulcandra, Thulcandra, or whatever, however you spell it. They call it Thulcandra, which in solar language, in the old solar language, like Malacandra, Thulcandra means the silent planet. And it is the only planet in the solar system. It's the only planet in the galaxy or wherever in space that is quiet. That none of the Oyarsas know what's going on. None of the Eldils know what's going on. And it comes to find out that the Oyarsa of Earth, of Thulcandra, was a fallen Oyarsa, fallen angel. So if you haven't guessed it, that fallen angel is what Christians would call the devil. So the devil, which was given rulership over and was as a mentor, was supposed to be a mentor to the Adam and Eve of Thulcandra, of Earth, ends up, obviously through the Christian writings, ends up causing them to sin and basically ends up the master of the world, right? Because God had given the world to Adam and Eve, and they gave it up through sin. So you find out that there's a battle going on, and it's against this what they call bent or evil Oyarsa, right? So you find this out at the end of the first book. And then you find out that in the second book, it's very different. So in the first book, you have this world that the world of Mars is very hard, and mountains are extremely high, and because gravity is not as prevalent, things are much bigger. Much bigger. And you have these different races, like you have a bunch of different races of these really cool looking things and communities and everything like that. And so you come off of it, you're like, wow, that's really cool. But you also find out that Mars is a dying world. It's one of the older worlds, so it's one of the dying worlds. And so in the second book, Paralandra is completely different. So you have Ransom. So yeah, hopefully you got all that context with the book number 1. In Paralandra, Ransom is sent by the Oyarsa of Mars, or the Oyarsa of Malacandra. The Oyarsa is able to sneak, however he's able to do it, Ransom from Earth in this kind of spaceship type thing, but it's made by the Oyarsa. So it's very different. It's like this coffin thing made of ice, and gets shot over to Paralandra, which is a very different place. Okay, so he's totally naked. So that's one thing, he has to be totally naked when he gets there. So he has to be totally naked when he gets there. He gets to Paralandra and finds out that it is extremely different than Malacandra. He finds himself in a very warm ocean with huge waves. Huge waves. I mean, it's waves that you see on Earth here. Like if you watch those like lobster hunting or crab hunting things where they're doing it in Antarctica, and the waves are like extremely big and they're crashing against the boats. It's like that, but it's a lot more gentle. Like the waves are huge like that, but they're not totally scary. But they're even bigger than what you see, but it's very different. Okay. And so he finds himself floating and swimming, and he's like, "Oh crap, this is crazy. I don't want to be in a place like this." He eventually starts seeing what he thinks are kind of like what he thinks is seaweed, like big masses of seaweed, but huge masses of seaweed, and he's trying to find something that he can grab a hold onto, right? And so eventually he makes his way to one of these things and realizes that it's actually an island. It's an island that has fruit. It has food. It is fully inhabitable. It actually has animals on there. It has this dragon that has a dragon that basically acts kind of like a dog, but very docile. He sees that that all of the land in Paralandra floats, not like our islands where they're in the middle of the ocean, but they're basically fixed islands. They're fixed lands. These lands actually float on top of the water, right? So he's able to go from island to island, some islands being bigger, some islands being smaller. He's able to eat off of a lot of the stuff that's there, and everything is ultra pleasurable, by the way. All of the food is the richest food. All of the feelings are the best feelings. Everything on Malacandra was edible, essentially, and hard and kind of dull and boring, but it was edible. Whereas on Paralandra, everything is edible, but it also feels good. It's extremely pleasurable, to the point where Ransom actually can only eat, he feels like he can only eat one thing at a time, move from one thing to the next. Otherwise, he would get addicted to this one type of fruit. That's how pleasurable it is. So anyway, all that being said, he cannot find any other tribes. So on Malacandra, he's able to find the Hrosa, which were these seal-like tribes. He was able to find the Sorns, Sorn. He was able to find, the Hrosas are Hrossa. He's able to find these different tribes. They had 3 different tribes, and that's not counting the Oyarsa and Eldil. So, and it had a lot of people. He can't find anybody here. He's just floating on these islands. He can barely walk because these waves, sometimes the waves are huge, sometimes they stop where there's no waves at all. But he can barely walk because it's almost constantly moving. So eventually, he finds that there is one other person, at least that he knows of, and it is this lady, this green lady. So she's green, but she looks just like him. But she's all green. And long and the short is, she tells him that. Or essentially, the long and the short is, she is the Eve of this new world. Okay, she's the Eve of Paralandra, a brand new world. And there is an Adam, what she calls the king, who she calls the king, but for whatever reason, she can't find him. They were together, but then now she can't find them. But she's perfect, she's sinless, and almost like baby-like, almost childlike. She doesn't understand a lot of the stuff that's happening. And the long and the short of the story is that you have a character from the previous book come and show up in the middle of all of this. And this character, for lack of a better way of putting it, is possessed by the devil, possessed by the bent Oyarsa of Earth, of Flocandra. And he essentially is trying to tempt this new Eve, just like he tempted the old Eve of our world, this new Eve to sin. And the way that she is supposed to sin, the way that he wants her to sin, is there is one fixed island. There is one fixed land in all of Paralandra. It is an island that does not float, it does not move, but it is an island. She is not allowed to be on that island overnight. Okay? That is the only thing she can't do. She can do everything else. She can eat whatever she wants. She can swim wherever she wants. She can be on any island. She can do it. She can go on the fixed land. She can go on the fixed island during the day, but she has to leave before nightfall. And so he spends the rest of the book trying to tempt her to do this. And I'm not going to tell you how it all ends. It's actually a really cool ending. I love this book. It's one of my favorite books. If you can't tell this just by all the names and everything like that, I love this book. Okay, but the thing that I love most about this book, and I love it more than the first in the series, the first book, Out of the Silent Planet, is essentially the reason why the islands float and why she is not allowed to go on the fixed land. And it is implied in the book, and you have to catch it. You have to pay attention. You have to catch it. But the reason for it, she can be on these floating islands all she wants, but she can't go on the fixed land. Or otherwise, she has sinned just like our Eve sinned by eating the apple, and our Adam sinned by eating the apple, by eating that as well. The reason for not going on the fixed land is out of trust. Trust that God, who they call Maleldil in this case, in the book, it's Maleldil is Jesus, Maleldil the younger. It's all about trusting. So all of these waves, what we would think of as scary, oh my gosh, what a big wave, this is scary. Like literally she, as a child, totally trusts that she's going to be fine. Like these big waves literally don't do anything to her. They don't scare her. They're just kind of there. They're what God brings. And if God brings it, God brings it. If God doesn't bring it, God doesn't bring it for whatever reason. But the biggest thing is the trusting that the wave is there for a reason, right? And so why is this all important? I went through all of this explaining of this series, at least the first two books, to get to this point, okay? God brings waves. And I know, as you're listening to this, you might not be Christian, you might not believe in a deity at all, and that's fine. That's what I do, obviously. I wouldn't. So I do, and I've seen it in my own life over and over and over again that God brings these waves. So in Paralandra, the lands swim. The lands go up and down with the waves. And that is what makes it exciting. It's what makes it pleasurable. Because the lands will stop eventually. They stop. And they go dormant, and they just kind of sit there almost like normal lands. Sometimes you might have two islands that kind of come close to each other, and the waves have stopped, and it looks like there's a river running between the islands. Or it looks like you're in just a normal land and there's a river running through. And so it's because of all these differences in waves and everything like that it makes life so fun and amazing and pleasurable on Paralandra. Not to mention all the pleasurable food and everything like that, but it's all done by this concept of providence and waves. And so if you notice in your life, if you look around and if you really take stock of where you were and where you are now, you'll notice that there are a lot of waves that you've ridden. There's a lot of waves that you refused to ride. And that these waves were sent to you to ride. These waves were sent to you to follow. I used to get so frustrated and so flustered and I used to get so angry that my business was not going faster. That my business, that I would start comparing myself to other people and look and go, well, this person, they have all of this, and here I am. I don't have it. I don't have it at all. Like, oh, poor me. Yet, not look that, God gave me, a business that I can do whatever I want, whenever I want, right? Like even for today, my wave, despite being a business owner of a thriving business, you know what my wave is for today? I think I mentioned it before in a previous podcast. Is it to do payroll? Is it to do accounting? Is it to do marketing? Is it to do advertising? No. My wave is to go build a cat house. a house that holds cats. So that we can get some wild cats to eat some of these rats, and not the rats, the gophers and things like that. That's my wave. And it's crazy because during this wave of just accepting it and enjoying it, my family life has been amazing. We've gotten new customers. Life has been fun and learn a ton. And it's so weird, right? This is something that's completely foreign to any business book that you're ever going to see. Any business advice that you're ever going to see. But if you look closely, just as in Paralandra, which is Venus, by the way, just as in Paralandra, the lands swim here. God gives waves, and it's up to you to choose to ride them or not. And you can't force waves. If you've ever done any type of boogie boarding or surfing, you realize you can't force waves. You can catch them, but you can't make them unless at least in the ocean, you can't make them, right? So you have to catch them. What wave is being sent to you right now? It could be with your family. It could be with your business. It could be with a whole mess of other things, a whole host of other things. What wave is being sent to you right now? I dare you to catch that wave and start riding that wave. It might seem completely foreign. It might seem completely, lack of a better word, retarded. A cat house right now seems retarded to me. But it's what I'm being called to do. And I'm doing it. And I'm having great results. What is the wave that's being sent to you right now? I challenge you to catch that wave and to ride it. All right, this is Dean Soto, Freedom in 5 Minutes. Go check out freedomin5minutes.com. Also, go check out prosulum.com, prosulum.com. Lots of good information there. Master classes. We have courses. We have a whole bunch of stuff, guys. And might even want to get a virtual systems architect, someone who can literally clone you and scale your business extremely quickly. Come on, Luna. Luna says goodbye, and I will see you in the next Freedom in 5 Minutes podcast episode.
Thanks for listening to the Freedom in 5 Minutes podcast. Now, head over to www.freedomin5minutes.com and register for our free masterclass and discover how to start systemizing and automating your entire business 5 minutes at a time. We'll see you next time on the Freedom in 5 Minutes podcast.